Hi everyone, welcome to today's how-to video. Today we want to think about how to understand our response, because we're all going through something together and it's worth understanding how we're all responding to that so we can make sure that we nurture and look after our relationships together. So today our special guest is my friend Vikki Napier. Vikki is the Parish Human Resources Partner for the Sydney Anglican Diocese. And so Vikki, thank you for being with us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's so good. So in your work, both in recent times and for a long time, as I understand, you work with people, you work with teams. What have you observed among individuals in this time?
Look, basically my observation is, and it will come as no surprise to you or the guys at Fig Tree, but we are all different. And so being different, we will respond differently. I think in stressful situations or in challenging situations, there's a thing called our locus of control. And so people can have either internal or external locuses of control. If you have an external locus of control, things will happen to you, or you will feel that things are happening to you. You know, this coronavirus is happening to you, this lockdown is happening to you, you have no control over your situation. For those with an internal locus of control, they will see that there are some things out of their control and they'll park those, but they'll look at the things within that situation or scenario that they can take control of. So invariably in all situations, there is something that we can control. We just need to be able to identify that. So people have a different tendency when it comes to challenging situations in that respect. So
that sounds like the most obvious thing is that we will be different with the different locus of control.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's important that we understand that we will have difference and we will respond differently?
If I'm different and I'm responding in a particular way to a situation, and I know conceptually that you're different and that my neighbour's different and that my friend is different, they may not respond the same way that I'm responding. So just because I'm doing okay doesn't mean that you're doing okay, or vice versa. Mm-hmm. I think what we need to do is recognise that people will be expressing how they're feeling in different ways. So if somebody is acting a little bit differently towards me or not responding in the way I would expect, then I've either miscommunicated what I was trying to explain to them, and I need to take responsibility for that. Or they may be expressing how they're feeling by responding in the way that they responded. And again, I have a responsibility as the communicator to recognise that, and as a Christian to recognise that and to love them in that and to help them.
I find that really helpful, particularly the gracious thinking, which always seems to be helpful.
Yeah.
Both for how we respond to others and how we view ourselves. If I can share, in some of the conversations I've been having with people, I've also observed that people are responding differently. So a great friend of mine, really generous guy, I was asking him about a new business venture he's taken off on, and he said, "Oh, look, I'm almost embarrassed and I feel guilty to say it's doing really well and things are going well for me." And I said, "You don't need to feel guilty about that. We're in a season where life has changed, and that's a real hardship for some.
Yeah.
For some, it's not. Some are possibly thriving in isolation and others are finding it hard." And so I think, the grace to understand each one will have their response, and it's somewhat okay to feel your feels, sort of thing.
Yeah, you are feeling what you're feeling, and that's, you need to be able to validate that and have those relationships of trust with one another where you can say just that, Shane.
Yeah,
it's okay to feel the way you feel. I was very happy in isolation and started to experience anxiety when I first heard the Premier talking about, well, now you can go and visit, 2 at a time. It's was my weekend. So people will experience different things at different times. So
yeah. Now, when we were talking the other day, you just gave an example then of feeling an anxiety or something like that. You share with me some specifics about the different responses that we might have, some different stages.
Yes.
Can you talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So there's a thing called a change cycle. It's called the Kubler-Ross change cycle, just named after the lady who came up with that, I guess, that principle or methodology. And it's a change cycle. I guess the fundamental of this is that we go through a process when we experience change. This change cycle is also called a grief cycle, because when you experience significant change, you grieve what used to be. So people associate grief with the death of a loved one, for example. And that's true. That's a significant change in your life. There was somebody that you loved who was with you who are no longer with you. So you're grieving that change. This isolation process that we've been going through, many people are grieving the life that they once had, the freedom to go out and have a coffee in a cafe and things like that, to catch up with your children and your grandchildren socially, all that sort of stuff. So there's this grief process that people go through. And because we're different, we'll experience it differently. A number of responses in that grief cycle, from denial, obviously shock when you first become aware of the situation. Then there's a denial process. Then there's frustration or anger. Then there's that depression, that low mood, that lack of energy, that, how much longer? Then there's an experiment phase, a decision phase, and then an integration phase. So they're all different phases that you will go through, or processes or experiences that you will feel during this time. And it's not a sequence either. You don't just, okay, I've done denial, tick, I'm now into frustration, so I'm angry, so give me 10 and I'll move into depression, and then you jump in and back and forth in that. I think many church workers, for example, may have really glossed over denial and frustration and depression in the early days, because they're running on adrenaline, 4 days to set up an online church service and to get communications out to the whole congregation and that sort of stuff. I think a lot of people were running on adrenaline in those early days. Then you get that set up, you've got Easter, you've got the school holidays, and now here we are again. And as a congregation member myself, it's, oh my goodness, like, here we are, still working from home. Not much has changed. Things are still tricky. I still can't go and meet up with my church family, who I love dearly, that sort of stuff. So people will go through different phases of this curve, depending on what they're doing and what their personality is like. So, there are ways to help people through that as well, I think. So if somebody is still at this late stage stuck in that denial phase, just help them to show evidence for the denial. Like, they might be saying, for example, oh, it's no biggie, this pandemic, it's not real. It's not as bad as people think.
See, what I really value about this is, number one, understanding that we're in different spaces. So you can live in the same house with someone and find yourself in conflict because you're just in different spaces.
Yeah.
The other thing that was really helpful for me was when you pointed out these things. I went, oh, okay, yeah, evidence, yeah. But when you said they're not necessarily sequential, that was really helpful as well, to sort of say, okay, it's not a case of do this one, then this one, then this one. Yeah. And I guess I could revert back to one as well.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
What final things would you say about ensuring that our different spaces that we're in and our different responses don't become a point of division in our relationship?
So my recommendations would be, don't jump. If somebody responds to you in a way that you weren't expecting, don't jump to that self-centered conclusion that we always jump to, which is, oh, that person's acting frustrated, or they seem to be angry. Therefore, they are angry with me. I need to protect my reputation, so I need to win this argument. God's not interested in that. God doesn't care who wins the argument. God wants to see who's acting in a godly way. So my response needs to be with humility, being aware that somebody may be displaying those behaviours because they're anxious or not coping very well today, and I want to be able to love them and help them through that. So park the conversation and have those caring, loving conversations. Are you okay? You seem a bit angry. Let's not worry about that now. I just want to make sure that I haven't said anything to offend you, and that if there's anything I can do to help you, let me know that.
As you've been speaking, one of the things I thought is, I guess, like always, I can't anticipate that my perspective on where we're up to should be everyone's perspective. Nor could they anticipate or should they project that their perspective is mine. And so I guess it's that parking of the business we want to talk about and understanding, how is it for you? How is it for me? Oh, I hadn't seen it that way. Oh, did you realise this? And finding that common ground to build the relationship on.
Yeah.
And I guess in that space, we avoid the destructive division and actually can build each other's perspective and bless one another. Is that a right way to think?
Yeah. Look, don't dig your heels in. You may have a perfectly good perspective and it may be valid. But if somebody else has a different perspective that is equally as valid, be the bigger person, show that humility, show that grace, and acknowledge that great idea. If there's an opportunity to then morph it into a better idea, combining the two great ideas, then do that. But our first response in any interaction ought to be humility and love. So like I said, we don't want to win arguments, particularly with our brothers and sisters. We want to demonstrate that love so that we want to be marked by love and humility.
Sounds like a great note for us to finish on. Thanks very much for opening up a little bit insight into that space. And as you say, knowledge is power. So in understanding some of those things and exploring next steps, I'm sure we can do better in how we connect with one another and how we understand. Thanks for being with us, Vikki.
Excellent. Thanks, Shane. See you.